Welcome back, everyone, to the Writer's Parachute, where we are guiding author and writer dreams to a perfect landing. We have with us today a very special guest. It's Steve Kidd. He is an author, writer, business coach, radio show host, entrepreneur, and minister. And we're going to talk to him about a couple of his books. Firstly, bestseller is only the beginning, and he has some extraordinary information for all of you authors out there wanting to get on the bestsellers list. But of course, we have a little bit of housekeeping to get done up front. We would love for you to go ahead and smash that like button. Go ahead and follow us here on YouTube or whatever platform you're listening to us from. We would also love for you to follow us on social media. We are on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and now on Threads at Writer Parachute. That's Writer Parachute without an S. So let's go ahead and get started. Of course, we always start the show off with our topic of the week. Here on season 2, we've been focusing on reviews, and I want to thank our guest today, Steve Kidd. He is bringing us the topic, and actually he's going to talk to you about ads with Amazon and reviews and some very interesting details I think you guys will find fascinating. Thank you, Steve, and I will go ahead and let you talk about it.
Yeah, it's really interesting, because reviews are so important. And yet, and I want to preface this before I go into what I'm going to teach, and that's everybody's going to get a bad review. And all of us know that when we get that first bad review, it is like somebody telling you your child's ugly. You know what I mean? It is the biggest insult. So I want to, kind of release everybody from that. Take a deep breath first. And then I want to talk to you about the number 10. 10 verified purchase reviews. Now, what's a verified purchase review? A verified purchase means that somebody actually went into Amazon, purchased the book, and then left the review. And a unique person, and not your mom. Okay, there's a few nuances in there. But a verified purchase review, you need a minimum of 10. There is something, and I've talked to all kinds of pros. Besides all the years that I've been doing this, there's something magical literally in Amazon's algorithm that when you hit that 10th verified purchaser review, it opens up a whole new world in Amazon. First and foremost, it opens up organic traffic. You will not hit organic traffic whatsoever in Amazon without having those 10 reviews. Second, and most importantly, is if you've ever want to spend money advertising on Amazon, it is a total throwaway until you get to that 10. If your book is not in a place where you have the 10 verified purchaser reviews, Amazon will gladly take your money and they'll kind of throw you out there, but it's not going to really do you any good. They really need you to be at that level. Again, keep in mind that the core and heart and soul of Amazon is a search engine based in the relevancy platform that is the whole thing that made Google so cool when it first came out. They want to really show people the most relevant of data, and that reviews and the 10 from actual purchasers, that makes a huge difference for them in their algorithm. So again, 10 verified purchaser reviews, and it's going to open up just a whole new world for you and everything you do, but especially in your advertising.
Okay, and I have a couple of follow-up questions I think that they would have. Number one, does this 10 reviews have to be on one version of your books? Let's say you have a hardcover, a softcover, and an ebook. Do those 10 verified purchase reviews have to be on a single version of your book, or can they be spread across all of them as long as they're all listed under your author central account?
They can all be spread across them if all of them are linked together. Okay. So, there's the two different ways where you can have your ebook and your print book, and they don't have the little squares side by side. It's funny because I have an Amazon up on this other screen, so I can actually literally see that right now. Mm-hmm. And the same would be true with your audiobook. If all three of those are options available, mm-hmm. then those count. If they are separate, then they don't.
Okay. So I'm going to follow up with a second question. So what if when they originally put it up on Amazon, it is separate and then they ask to have them linked? If any of those reviews come in before they are linked, do they still count or not?
They should all count. If they don't, you want to contact back Amazon and have them go back and catch your reviews. That means they did something wrong on the technology side of things, because when they're linked, it should just show you your reviews overall for the book. It shouldn't change between how many reviews you have, whether you're looking at the ebook or the print book version.
Okay, awesome. Well, this has been a very good information for the audience, and I do appreciate you sharing that with us. It's it's really important, as he said, reviews are kind of like king for authors and writers. It's how we get discovered. It's how word of mouth happens. Is literally a review is word of mouth. It's a person's opinion about your book, what they liked about it, what they didn't like about it. He did mention bad reviews, and I have a different kind of take on bad reviews. Bad reviews are actually not bad, because what happens a lot of times, and this is interesting, I had this happen just last week, where somebody was posting about their first bad review, and of course they're naturally upset, and I don't discount that feeling. I mean, you put a lot of heart and soul into your book, and so getting a bad review is hard. And but I reminded this person, I'm like, you just created a call to action, and you just advertised your book, and look at all the people responding that now know about your book, who might now go review it, might now go purchase it, might now go read it. So sometimes you get to make lemonade out of that lemon. So just remember, it's not the end of the world. And quite frankly, I think it actually elevates your credibility, because if you only have 5-star reviews, then people are a little suspicious. So I know that when I purchase things, I look at the good reviews, but I also look at the moderate reviews, and I look at the bad reviews, because sometimes that bad review helps me decide if this is really the book for me. I may discount what the person has to say. It may not be something that bothers me, but it might give me useful information. So just keep that in mind. But thank you, Steve, for sharing that with us today. We appreciate all of your knowledge, and we want to get on to introducing Steve. Steve Kidd is an author, writer, business coach, radio show host, entrepreneur, and minister. He has several books out. We're going to be talking to him about Bestseller is Only the Beginning. He has another book out called Become a Bestseller Today, How to and Why You Need to Be a Bestseller. And then he has a 10-book series on thriving success. So Steve Kidd is a best-selling author and also an entrepreneur, business coach, radio show host, and third-generation minister. Along with other samples, he has a series of 10 books, Thriving Success, where he shows the reader how to showcase their talent and guides them on a journey to do so, starting with having passion and love for what they do, followed by the challenges they might face in the process of becoming successful. He also has a radio show called Thriving Entrepreneur, which has been broadcasting for almost 8 years and has aired on more than 350 episodes. Steve's mission in life is to spotlight amazing, heart-centered individuals and helping them to become successful authors and bestsellers. He's helped thousands, bringing their message to the world, and has impacted millions in the process. His big heart sets him apart, along with being an extreme visionary, the best in the world at seeing the up level. If you want insights into trends, projects, opportunities, and you're also looking for a powerful clarity that compassionately unleashes passion, Steve is your guy. Welcome to the Writer's Parachute, Steve. I know you've already been talking here, but we want to properly introduce you. How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me, Donna. I appreciate it.
Well, I am so excited to have you here. I mean, you have so much knowledge. It's like I was having a really hard time trying to pick and choose what I wanted to talk to you about. You had so many great quotes in this book, Bestseller is Only the Beginning. We're going to talk about a couple of them, but it's like this one, I just loved it. It just kind of stopped me in my tracks. And I'm like, yes, it's on page 25. And it's just like a doctor keeps learning and growing. You too will continue to learn and apply, learn, grow, make mistakes, and change. That's professional development. All about a never-ending growth to your advanced degree in what you know best. I absolutely love that quote. I'm like, yes, this is what we do. This is why we don't do it perfect. the first time, why we get better each time, because we're growing and learning. I love that. And another one that I really, really liked, it's on page 29. It says, when you tell somebody you're a best-selling author, they immediately trust and believe in you. And I absolutely agree with that. So this new book, Bestseller is Only the Beginning. I want to know how this project came together and what was your inspiration behind it?
So, and I've been working with authors for, oh gosh, 17 years now. And I've helped so many people become bestsellers. But the problem is that I always liken it to the movie Field of Dreams. People become bestsellers and they think, oh, it's just going to be the end and, end all bin, and it really isn't. That's why in the book I refer it as though you're graduating from medical school. It's really the equivalent of that, because it is the certification that says you know your stuff. It's a third party, says, hey, here's a seal of approval on that, so that you can then really actually earn the right to go out and learn, to be able to do and show that what you do know you can do. So that was kind of the inspiration behind it. Secondarily, back when I started in this, there was nobody that had a bestseller program. In fact, most anybody that that has a program to help you become a bestseller is probably using my system and probably doesn't know it. I've been the man behind the curtain for a lot of years doing that for a lot of people. And it's really interesting because people have this opinion of their growth to bestseller. And what I know as a marketing company is bestsellers a marketing strategy. It's what we're going to do to your book on day one. It's the foundation. It's like building a house. We're going to put a really solid foundation under it, in this case, bestseller, and then build everything else in marketing that we do on top of your best-selling book and you being a best-selling author.
Right. And what I find is people have different opinions and ideas of how to get to bestseller. And I think some of them are not always to the best credibility of the author themselves. So I don't know if you agree with me, but I do believe that there is a correct and right way to do it. And then there's some of those that are a little questionable.
Well, it depends on which, and we'd have to have a long discussion about whether those are. But again, because I'm always approaching it from a marketing standpoint, and because the whole concept of creating a formula for becoming a best-selling author happened because as a marketing company, I needed it to market the multimillionaires that I was working with. It is, like you said, it's a foundation, it's a starting place. So it doesn't matter whether you're using one of those, we'll call them what you said, less than formulas, or you're using another version of it. It is about the beginning of your marketing and where does your marketing start and what marketing language do you want in it. I'll put it to you this way, Donna. When you go into your doctor's office and Dr. whomever walks into the room, we don't sit that person down and say, okay, where'd you go to school? What did you graduate in your class? What kind of grades did you have? What's your GPA? Where did you go to undergraduate? We don't interview the person. He comes in or she comes in and is a doctor, and we immediately then tell them what our issue is and take whatever diagnosis they give us and go and get the prescription or go and get the further care that we need. Bestseller is really another one of those kind of things.
Right. Well, like I said, I've experienced some issues where it kind of, as you said at the top of the show, it becomes the be all end all, and the pursuit of it in some what I would call questionable ways. But I'm not going to trip up too much on it. It's like I'm going to suggest anybody that wants to become a bestseller that maybe they should go check out your programs and your books, because I think you have the best, most legitimate path to get them to a bestseller, which is why I have you here on the show, because I want to share your information with my listeners and my audience. So what is the first step for authors who want to become a best-selling author or an international best-selling author as you usually refer to it.
Well, and of course, step one is you've got to stop going to have a book and you've got to actually put your book out there. And, a lot of times when I'm having these discussions, I forget to mention that, but that really is step one, is moving from the I'm going to do my book to, that terrifying moment of you put it out there and let the whole rest of the world judge you.
Right. It is. It's, I liken it to jumping off of off of a mountain and having to build your parachute on the way down.
Yeah.
It's a bit scary, but you have the tools to do it. So in your book, Bestsellers Only Beginning, you state, and it's another quote, your message to the person you're meant to serve is like water to a person lost in the desert. That's from page 18. So I want to ask you what you meant by that, and how does it illustrate why a bestseller designation is so critical?
So the cool part about it is, and why I love that analogy is because if you offer somebody that's truly dying of thirst, water of any sort, um, it is literally the difference between life and death for them. The same is true because all of us get in our head. It doesn't matter whether, like me, you've got 21 books and several others you're working on, or it's your very first book. Every single book, we always get in our head and we start talking about, well, what if it doesn't mean anything to anybody? What if it doesn't help them? So when we think about that one person and the fact that what they need, and it just happens to be that the way you said it, even though everybody else in the world may have said it a million times over, the way you said it makes it through to that person and it makes the difference. I'll give you a really real world example of that concept. When my youngest daughter, who was at the time going through acute myeloid leukemia, was in the hospital. Now, I always jump forward and let everybody know she's fine. She's married. She's doing great. She's in full remission. She's doing great. Okay. So you don't have to worry the whole time through the story that, my poor daughter. When she was in the hospital, though, the people that were online that were sharing their stories from, they were 2 weeks or 2 months or a year ahead of where we were in the journey. Those were life and breath to us. Those were sometimes literally the difference between that sensation pit in your gut as a parent of what am I going to do if my child doesn't make it, and them having that story meant the same difference. And that's what your book will be to that one person. When we focus on that person, that truly is what's going to make all the difference.
Well, and I happen to agree with you. It is primarily what we do here on the Writer's Parachute is, we're trying to get the information out to authors and writers, who are struggling. I can't tell you the number of times with my writing coaching that I have authors go, oh, it's just me. I'm the only one that does. I'm like, no, you're not. You're not. There's so many other people that struggle. They may struggle with something different than you do, but everybody has a journey to go through to get there. It's not an easy task. If it were, everyone would do it. I mean, it does feel like everyone's doing, but that's not true. It's actually a very small percentage of people who actually finish, write, and publish their book, and an even smaller percentage who make it to the international bestseller list. So it's it is what we do as writers. Is the reason we write something is we have something to say, and you have to think about who needs to hear that. And I do tell authors this all the time when they get to that imposter syndrome. It's like there is somebody somewhere just waiting breathlessly to hear your words and the way you told that story, because to them there's some connection where there may not be a connection with other people. So that's extraordinarily valuable to authors to understand that it does start with, as you said, that passion, but the passion has to be towards the reader, not ego, I guess, is where I usually go with that. So but so I know that you have so much information in this book. So I want to know what you think are the top 3 missteps or confusion that authors have or make around publishing their books and sharing their purpose.
Oh gosh, these may not necessarily be in the 1, 2, 3 order. I'll give them to you as they come to me.
Okay.
First and foremost is, and this is the hardest part in my life, is when I have to explain to somebody that they don't really own their book. Now, first of all, most all of us know, most people know, if you go through a traditional publisher, part of that whole agreement is they now own your book. Okay. I have a friend of mine that refers to publishing companies as loan sharks, because if you want to get the ownership of your book back, you're going to pay that kind of a rate to get your book back. But the more nuanced version of that is if somebody uses their email address to log into Amazon, Amazon selling 90, 95% of all books sold. So one way or another, your book needs to be on Amazon. If they're the ones that are loading it up to Amazon through their email address, as far as Amazon's concerned, they have a contractual agreement with the owner of that email address. That's the person who owns your book. Unfortunately, if that company, that person, that email address goes away, you're then stuck having to have to prove to Amazon that the form field name that is your author, which may be your real name or could be a pen name, because you can put anything in there you want pretty much, that's actually you and it always has been. So that's number one, is you really want to make sure that you truly own your book. And then that way you don't have to later on get permission when you create a course from that book to be able to use the material that, oh goodness, you don't own. So that would be them.
Yeah, and I'm going to interrupt you there because this is why, it's so important that you do file the actual official copyright paperwork. I know that people say it's not necessary, but you know what? I would rather be sure. I would rather be 100%, have everything registered and right. This is also why we do the ISBN numbers and the control numbers with the Library of Congress. That's why we include the copyright or publication page in your book, because it does clarify that. And, yes, they do own the one copy of the book that they purchased. However, there are some restrictions under, copyright and fair use laws, but I do understand what you mean. It's like they're kind of the owner of your book, but yeah, this is why it's so important to do all of those steps correctly. So continue,
Yeah.
sorry.
So, the second mistake that people make is perfection. There is no such thing as a perfect book. None. Okay. There are such a fun list, and you'd have to go to the internet and look up all of them, of mistakes that have made it all the way to print, of books, even like the Bible. There's a version of the Bible that actually has it say, "Thou shalt kill." Really different concept, and those are people whose literally their life's purpose is to make sure that things like that don't happen, and it still goes through. So when we give up, and I'm not saying don't have your book be good, don't pour through it, but when we give up the need for it to be word perfect, and we understand we can always go back and fix it when we find something wrong, that then goes back to the somebody's waiting on you that we were talking about earlier. Better to have a typo in every sentence and help the person in need than to have it be grammatically perfect sitting on your desk and never put out because you're just still pretty sure you missed a comma somewhere. So that would definitely be the second one is perfection is the enemy of the good. And it really becomes an ego issue when we get to the point where we don't just put it out and then continue to develop it. So that would be the second thing that I see people run into. I think the third one really boils down to, because of the fact that I deal with bestsellers, and everybody's heard of the New York Times. Everybody's like, well, do you mean the New York Times bestseller list? It's really about understanding first of all, where books are sold and what the different bestseller lists mean. So Amazon's is the only statistically driven list that I know of, meaning that if your book's at number 2 and another book's at number 3, your book sold more copies than the book at number 3. Amazon doesn't care whether it's sold at $0 or $1 million. They're looking for unique individuals. They define a unique individual as a unique email address. And they want to know hour by hour what is right now the best-selling books. So it's a really powerful phrase when you say, my book was on the best-selling list. Even if your book was on the bestseller list last week and it isn't this week, that's because, there may have been 100,000 books that have been published since last week. I mean, given these days, that might be a little high, but it's not too far off.
Mhm.
Um, and so it's important to really understand that nuance. When we go to New York Times is an editorial page that is based off of, actually, it's a list that the Nielsen company, the same people that do TV ratings, which I loved it. I was interviewing a guy and he said, well, yeah, but that's a totally different group of people than the ones that you really have reading your books, which is true.
Mhm.
They take that list and then they write an editorial of what they believe to be the best-selling books. That list, first of all, is based off of wholesale purchases by big box retailers, Walmart, Sam's Club, etc. It doesn't mean that anybody read your book. I mean, they may have sold all 50,000 copies. They may not have sold any of them. And then secondarily, again, like you said, it's an editorial. So there are a lot of different kinds of nuances. And I don't really want to get into all the different issues of why it could be, but they're a privately held company. They could just go into a bookstore and look at 50 copies of books and say, those are the top 50 books. And they own the company. They're allowed to do that. So we want to be really sure we know that. The third group of bestseller lists are ones where, if you pay a certain amount, they'll just put you on your list. It's basically an ad,
Mhm.
and they generate ad revenue that way. So it's important to really understand what bestseller is, so that you then know when it's your goal, you also understand why it's your goal and what it really means and what's really practical to achieve.
Right. Absolutely. And that's extraordinarily useful information because, I get this same question a lot. When you mean bestseller, do you mean the New York Times bestseller? Do you mean the Publisher Weekly? And it's like, again, you're right. They have different goals and different means and opinions about who belongs and why they belong on that list versus Amazon, which is strictly based on sales. So that's good. And I did want to, talk about this perfection thing that you brought up as item number two, because I see this a lot. And I try to tell people it's really hard to be perfect. Number one, you don't learn anything from being perfect, you learn from messing up. And number two, it's like I don't want to get bogged down. And the other side of that is if I'm perfect with this book, that means I have to be perfect with every other book that comes after, because I've set
Well,
that precedent for my readers and it's impossible to live up to. And honestly, if somebody's waiting to hear your words, they just need to hear your words. They don't have to be perfect words. When we talk, we mess up. We stumble around, we look for the right word. And readers are not going to be bothered by that. Now they will be bothered if you didn't have any editing in there, but the occasional, missed word, it's like I often find readers think of that as like a treasure hunt. They're like, oh, there's a mistake. I found it, you know,
yeah.
and they feel
Oh,
like
yeah.
they've achieved something. And so I don't mind leaving those in there. And for myself, I know I have mistakes in my book. Yes, I could go fix them and after the fact and correct them. But I really thought deep about that. And I felt like for me, it was better to let my readers see that I improve each time I write a new book. So I don't worry too much about it. It's like it's done, it's passed. I continue to promote it. I continue to do all the things I need to do, but I don't need to rewrite that book. I already did that.
Well, and here's another fun piece of information for people so that they can also relax and breathe. If you were to give your book to 1,000 different professional editors and have them go through and edit your book, you would end up with 1,000 different edits of your book. Every single one of them would tell you why the other person was wrong and they were right. And then secondarily, if you waited long enough that they didn't remember it was their edit, they'd go back through and they'd tell you all the reasons why that edit that they had done was
Mhm.
wrong. Editing is really not a science. It truly is an art form. I know we weren't taught that in grade school, but that really is what editing is. So, it's okay. And, if somebody gets all uppity in it, I love what one of my friends said. She said, I love it when people correct my grammar because I know immediately they're not listening to what I'm saying. They're looking for the errors. And it helps me know that they're probably not going to be my ideal client.
Right. Exactly. And I myself am an editor, and I tell people all the time, it's like, just because I'm an editor, I may not be the best editor for you. It's like there's a partnership between the author and the editor. And the editor has to see the vision, they have to hear the voice, they have to know what the person is trying to go for. But yeah, it's like I can't imagine having that many different editors. And again, it is based on an opinion. Editors, they're trained, they have trained for certain things, but it's not just about commas and periods and other punctuation or spelling or grammar or anything like that. There's a lot. It's like, I've challenged authors to make sure that that if they say something that's a little outside the lines, I challenge them to make sure that they understand that they are kind of coloring a little bit outside the lines, and they understand that, and they have a reason for doing that. There's no rules or anything. It's always guidelines and guide rails. And yes, if you want to jump over the side, you can, but you better have a good reason for it. And also to make sure that their book has that continuity to it. So there's so many different aspects of being an editor and looking at a book. And you're absolutely right, you can look at a book this year and look at the same book a year from now, and you're going to have a different opinion about it because you're a different person, just like any other normal person. Editors are person people, we're human, we make mistakes, we change our thoughts and opinions about things. So that's why it's really important, if you're looking for an editor, find an editor that works for you. Get those sample edits. Make sure that they're working with you, not against you. And sometimes it's a personality clash, and that's okay. That's why there's a bunch of us out here. So I want to know what you think are the critical steps that an author needs to take to set themselves up to be a best-selling author.
So, I mean, there's several of them. The first one really goes back to that mindset part, though. And yes, number one is that somebody's waiting on you. You will say the thing in a way that's going to reach somebody else. Secondarily, your book may and probably will reach millions, but the focus on the one is really the most powerful way to do it. Because honestly, if your book saved somebody's life, reached somebody in a way or at a time when they needed it, that would be more than enough. So, those are the beginning pieces of that. And then from there, it really comes to it boils down to understanding Amazon is a system. Amazon is an algorithm, and there is a system to it. I always feel like when I get to this part of the interview that I'm telling people that didn't know that, it's not Santa Claus putting the presents under the tree. Your mom and dad are doing that. And that's true with becoming a bestseller. It is understanding the algorithm of Amazon, doing the things that you need to do, and then really working with them. I'll give you a perfect example. Pre-sale campaigns, which I know a lot of people are really, really high on. Pre-sale campaigns work amazing on day one, but the algorithm on Amazon on day two takes. So what happens is on day one, you pre-sold 1,000 books, let's say. On day one, the minute that book releases, Amazon system looks at it and says, look, they just sold 1,000 books in like a minute. Wow, that's amazing. Of course it's a bestseller. But then day two, the algorithm catches up with itself and it says, oh no, actually they sold 1,000 books over the course of this last year. And it was an average of about 1.5 every hour over the course of 365 days or something like that. And so that dramatically on day two changes your algorithm. So it's really about understanding that. And it really is part of where we start, where day one for your book is from a marketer standpoint. And, ultimately I'm a marketing company that works exclusively with authors. So I'm always thinking from a marketer's mindset. That's why step one is of our launch is we make the book a bestseller, and then we build everything on top of that. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And and I mean, this is something that I talk about all the time, just marketing in general. You can't just go market and hope for the best results. You have to have a result in mind and market towards that. And I mean, I hear this all the time, and they're like, "Oh, this author did something and they got an amazing result." Well, what was the I don't know. I did it. I can get a good result. Well, what did you want? Well, I don't know. Well,
If you aim at nothing, you'll probably hit it.
exactly. So it's like, yeah. Do you want to sell more books? Do you trying to get to that bestseller? Or are you trying to get reviews? Are you just trying to build up your platform? Get interviews. What is it that you are trying to market towards? And I think that's clearly illustrated in going for this bestseller. It's like you have to be marketing towards that result.
Yeah, and really, again, bestseller is a credential.
It
It's
really
a thing we need to then make our marketing plan work. So if our plan for our book is this is going to be my free giveaway, originally we talked about it earlier that I have a 10-book series now. That originally was supposed to be a free giveaway. I sat down to write out a free giveaway, and 110 8.5 by 11 single spaced pages later, I had a little bit more than a free giveaway, obviously. Um, but being able to have a free giveaway and say, I would like for you to give me your email address in exchange for my best-selling book on,
Mhm.
or I'd like to do a course with you taught from my best-selling book. That bestseller credential is really huge when it comes to our marketing. And that in most cases is our why behind it, but it's also the thing we need to understand then as we go into creating our marketing for everything we're doing in our business, why it's a mandatory foundational element to everything that we do in marketing.
Absolutely. And it's attention grabbing.
Yeah.
It's like you are going to automatically assign higher credibility level to somebody who is a best-selling author or an award-winning author, especially if they're both best-selling award-winning author. It's like you're like, oh wow, they've hit the pinnacle kind of thing. And it does capture the attention. It's almost like a magical fairy dust on your book.
Oh yeah. Yeah. When I tell people that I've been a marketing company for 37 years, a lot of times they even almost are like, well, A, why have you been doing it so long? B, why are you so old? And C, how come you don't have a bigger results from it? When I tell them that, I've written now 21 international best-selling books, all of a sudden they're like, oh, well, tell us some more, please.
Exactly. It's like it's all, as I try to tell people, it's all the way in you present yourself. If you present yourself uh, with the credentials, and in a positive manner, then people are going to take it that way. If you're I deal with shy authors, and there's nothing wrong with being shy or introverted, but if you're going to be an author, you are automatically a public figure, and you have to find a way to present yourself that is going to get that attention. Because if you don't, there's kind of not a whole lot of purpose behind having your book out there, because who's going to find it? Who's going to read it? It's kind of like screaming into the wind. It's like it's not going to get you very far. So I want to know, what obstacles or challenges have you had to overcome in writing and publishing your books?
Um, Gosh, there's so many. Would you like a list or just the top 10? That's kind of what I wanted to say the
Well,
first
how
time you
about
asked
the
me
top
too.
two?
But I mean, the number one, of course, is that self-doubt and that fear. It's the question of what do I have to say that hasn't been said a million times over? With my first book, I actually sent it to my mentor, Dr. Donald Joy, who at the time He had 44 published books plus about 2,000 articles because he was a professor. So, that's what he did for a living, was write articles. And I really actually expected him to send it back and say, this was cute, and just kind of pat me on the head. But, he was really encouraging. He even wrote the forward for me. And that was really where I began to get that different perspective of the fact that all of us have something we need to say. And wherever you're at the place, whether you're like my granddaughter when she was 8 and wrote her first book, and the only thing you know is that you love your best friend more than anything else in the world, and you just want to tell everybody in the world about your best friend. So she wrote a book about meeting her best friend. It's a cute little book. I love it. Whatever that might be, there's somebody that really needs that. So that's the biggest piece of it, is that fear. And then secondarily is the nuance between typing/writing and speaking out your words. And this may gravel against some people because some people are just love writing. But if you go back and you look at something you've spoken out versus something that you've written out, you will find a commonality. This is why journaling works so powerfully. The things that you write out yourself, they're very cathartic. They're very much about what you're thinking and feeling and what you're going through. When you talk, if you have somebody in mind, if you're not just talking to yourself, it tends to be user, reader, listener focused. And that makes a really huge nuance then in our ability for what our words are doing to reach the people that we want to reach with them.
Right, because I think it becomes very stilted. And, I do tell my writers that, before you do any of the, sending it off to an editor or finalizing or something, sit down and read it out loud, because it's amazing the things your ears will hear that your eyes will never see. And you want, whatever you're writing, whether you're writing in fiction or nonfiction, self-help, whatever it is, you want it to be a story. So it needs to be more conversational. How would you say this to somebody you were having coffee with, rather than how would you say it if you're in front of a big group of people? Because that
Yeah.
doesn't, because that doesn't, that tonality comes across. They don't feel that connection if you're speaking as if you were speaking to a crowd and it's all just kind of a generic thing. But if you're being more coffee conversational, then they feel that it is just you and them having that conversation, that you are speaking directly to them. And it's kind of one of the really important keys in getting your book across is talk to that one reader. Don't talk to the crowd, talk to the reader. Because, people read books one at a time. It's one person at a time. You don't generally have a group of people getting together reading a book. I mean, it does happen occasionally, but generally even those people have already read the book before.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes we there's some caveats with children's books and stuff like that, but for the most part, people are reading the book. If they love the book, even if they've heard it read to them, if it was done well, if that tonality was done correctly, then they're going to want to read it for themselves too. This is why we have these beloved books where people are just, oh, I have to read it, 10 or 20 times. I read it every year or every 6 months or something like that. So I think that's clearly important. And, self-doubt is kind of one of those things that comes with writing and publishing, simply because, as you said earlier, we're putting ourselves out there. They do say that writing is like, opening a vein and bleeding on the page. And it is to a certain extent, because you're having to pre-trust that your audience is going to not rip you to shreds for what you have to say. I don't think that happens really often. I think people are generally kind and understanding. And it's like, if it's not for them, then they just kind of avoid it and go on about their business. So there isn't as much of that ripping to shreds. But, there is a certain fear in that, people are going to have something to say and something, an opinion. And I'm like, well, everybody has an opinion. It doesn't necessarily mean that it is the right opinion. It just is an opinion. So, this is what we talk about reviews. Just because somebody didn't like your book does not make your book a failure. It just means it may not necessarily have spoken to them. And that's okay, because we can't be everything to everyone all the time. We have to, we have to pick and choose. It's like, when you have characters in your book, when you're writing fiction, you have to determine who or what they're going to be. Now, somebody may have an opinion about, oh, well, they should be something different. Well, again, that's their opinion. And if they want to write a book and change that, they're certainly able to do that. But that does not necessarily mean their opinion is wrong. It just means that it's just not relevant. So just keep that in mind. So I know you have another book that we mentioned at the top of the show called Becoming a Bestseller Today, How to and Why You Need to Be a Bestseller. So I want to know what readers are going to get from that book, separate from this bestseller is only the beginning.
Well, number one, when we talked earlier about editing, I've actually got it on my desk right now because I'm editing all kinds of things that I found that were wrong in it. So first of all, what you're going to get is freedom to know that no matter how badly edited your book is, you can still do a lot of really great things and help a lot of people with it. That's totally a side note. That doesn't have anything to do with the book, but I was just noticing that the other day and I was like, oh my goodness. But the whole concept of that, I have a workshop that I do that's called Write Your Bestseller in 1 hour. And I wanted to put that into book form and go into a little bit more detail about how to write your book. And so we do actually talk the specifics of how to write your book. It was funny. I actually got a review. We were talking about negative reviews. I got a review of Bestsellers Only at the beginning, and the negative review was they didn't tell you how to write your book. And I was like, well, that's not what that book was about. Go see the book about how to write your book. So that is really what it is. But we also go into, what kind of book do people want to read? And we talk about what Amazon calls short reads. And I even share some of the statistics of the fact that how much people are demanding shorter books these days. We live in a Twitter world where people have whole conversations, 140 characters at a time. So a 350-page book is overwhelming to them. Not to mention if you get it in an audio and they tell you it's going to take you 18 hours to listen to the book, So we go into all of those kind of things and talk about what can you expect to experience from it. And then literally walk through the process of, okay, if you want to write your book, here are the fundamental elements. I actually, before I created my system way back 17 years ago, I actually went through all the books I've ever read, a whole bunch of books on my shelf and stuff like that. And I discovered that there's really basically 4 elements to every single book. Every book, and every time I do this, somebody's like, well, what about, I was like, okay, there's some outliers, but substantially speaking, there are 4 elements to every single book. We start off with the know, like, and trust factor. Fiction or nonfiction, in fiction, we got to buy in. We got to like the primary character. We're not going to finish the book. We're not going to care. In nonfiction, if they don't believe and trust in you, they don't care what you have to teach. And then we go from there into the meat and potatoes. We're either building the tension in fiction, building the story and the plot and the premise, or in nonfiction, we're literally just telling them what we're going to tell them, telling them it, teaching them it, and then going back and telling them what we told them. That's part 2. Part 3 is always the downturn, the takeaway. In fiction, it's Han Solo and Luke Skywalker are in the trash compactor and the droids are outside hearing them scream and they think that they're dead. That's a perfect, quote unquote act 2 in a 3-act play where we have that everything goes wrong kind of a situation. In nonfiction, that is the I wish I would have known this before, or here's the advice I'd like to give to the 20-year-old version of myself. And or even, hey, you need to feel free enough to choose to not do what I'm teaching you here. And here's what you're likely going to experience or have been experiencing and are going to continue to experience. And then ultimately we have part 4, which is the outcome, the victory, the good guy wins over the bad guy. Or in in a nonfiction book, you know, this is where we're going to give them specific something to do, something to take action on. You know, in a nonfiction book, you should, well, actually in marketing in general, the last step of all of your marketing should be inviting the person to take another step with you. And that really literally is the very, very simply put, and I go into more detail in the book, but very, very simply put, the 4 elements to every single book that exists.
Yes, you've done an excellent job of breaking that down. And, you know, it's like we talk about this as a call to action. You know, you need to have that call to action. We talked about this just recently on one of the episodes about reviews and not getting the results. People were like, oh, you know, I listened to you and you said, you know, make sure that, you know, promote your reviews when you get them. And I'm like, yes, but you can't just go on social media and go, hey, I got a review. And everybody's like, okay, great, congratulations. And they move on. But if you go, hey, I got this amazing review. Have you read my book? Have you reviewed my book? Then they know that you want them to do something. It's as simple as that. If you don't tell them you want something, then how do they know? I mean, we're seriously not mind readers. And you know,
Yeah, for
you can
sure.
be more complicated and a little more nuanced about that. But, you know, that's an easy way to say, hey, I got this amazing review. Have you reviewed my book? Have you read
Mhm.
my book? You know, people are like, oh, maybe I should go check it out. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, not necessarily going to give you the results you want, but that's better than just going, hey, I got this amazing review.
Yeah.
So, because to me, the difference is the one, hey, I got this amazing review. That's an announcement. The other one is an actual call to action. Go review my
Yes,
book, go buy my book,
absolutely.
go read my book, something, do something. So I agree with you there. So I could sit here and talk to you for hours and hours about this, but you know, we have to keep this to a level that you're talking about. I do want to mention one thing what you're talking about these shorter reads. Yes, and I have this conversation more often with nonfiction authors than I do with fiction authors, although fiction too, it's like, you know, pare down those stories. It's like, you know, exceeding 30 to 40,000 words is a recipe for a problem, unless, of course, you're working in maybe fantasy, thriller, or sci-fi. And again, that has more to do with the world building part of it, but even those could be pared down a little bit. But you know, I see a lot of these nonfiction books where they're like, okay, I'm going to teach this, and then I'm going to have places for them to do journal entries, and then I'm going to have like workbooks and questions. I'm like, no, 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 no. Break that into 3 books. Marketing
Mhm.
tells you that people are more willing to pay more money for 3 separate books than they would be for one all-inclusive book because it seems overwhelming.
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't seem valuable if it's all in one book. They're like, well, why would I pay that much for that book? But if you break it down into 3 books and the total of the 3 books is even more than the one book, they're still willing to pay for it. Which
Yeah,
is,
for
yeah,
sure.
you know, you have to, you know, there is a certain marketing aspect that you have to think about the way you present your book too. And I think it's a very important point that you brought forward. So what is next on your agenda?
Oh, goodness. Well, I mean, I actually have 5-ish, it's actually closer to 7 books that I'm actually working on right now. Um, you know, my actually after Bestsellers Only the Beginning came out, I actually put out a Christian book that's called Playing Hit It and Quit It with Jesus, and it's talking directly to men about the respect and the nature of their relationship with their wife. And it's actually called Playing Hit It and Quit It with Jesus. I'm working on a more in-depth version of that that's called Mother Fairy Lust Gem, talking very directly to men about some of the transitional phases and some of those kind of things. It's a much more nuanced, much deeper book than many of the other books that I've written. I've got a couple of nonfiction books. I'm doing a follow-up book to my Romeo the Suicidal Parakeet book, which is a comic based book. It's so much fun.
Mhm.
You know, just kind of looking at the world through the eyes of why we actually literally had this parakeet that for whatever reason he kept dropping himself on his head in his cage. And so, I have for years contemplated, why did this crazy bird drop himself on his head? And so I wrote a book. It just kind of took modern day things that were going on. And so I'm doing a follow-up book on it that's going to look at some other kind of things that people are experiencing in the world through Romeo's eyes and his very snarky, sarcastic way of saying something about it and then dropping himself on his head over it. So I've got all of those that I'm working on, and plus I've got a couple other marketing books. And then in addition to the books that I'm writing, we are in the process of building an even tighter community. We have a great community of people, but an even tighter community of people that want to be on board with us to help really change the world for authors. There are a lot of us that are blessed to be able to, in one way or another, put our book out. There's a lot of people out there with amazing stories that they either live impoverished here in America or in a lot of countries that they would never be able to even contemplate putting a book out. And so we're putting together a whole formula for them so that their books can get out and get shared with the world and still make it to bestseller and really impact some lives. So always a lot of really cool things going on, but that's just kind of a little taste of a little bit of them.
Wow, that is amazing. You're an amazing person. And of course, when you're ready to come back, we would love to have you come back and talk some more about these new books that you're working on. So of course, here on the Writer's Parachute in season 2, we've been focusing on reviews. So I'm going to put you on the spot. I would love for you to give us a review of your book, Bestseller is Only the Beginning.
Oh, give you my review of my book. Bestseller is Only the Beginning is the book written on purpose to help you be able to understand how to maximize your marketing and your reach in the world so that you can impact the life of the person that you know you're meant to serve, but you've struggled with knowing how to be able to truly get to them. We want to show you what the magic secret sauce behind really truly reaching people is.
Awesome 5-star review. And the reason that we put our guest here on the spot is we want to illustrate for all of our listeners that reviews are not complicated. They're not difficult. It's probably most difficult to review your own book because it feels like your own child. Or talking about yourself, how do you review yourself? Well, it's a little difficult, but to illustrate the point, we are doing it so that you know that reviews are not that difficult. They don't have to be complicated. It could be something as simple as, I enjoyed this book. I like this book. I recommend this book to this group or this person, or I didn't like this book for this reason or the other. It is an opinion. It is your opinion based on what you felt when you read this book. We would love to have you go check out Steve's book, Bestsellers All in the Beginning, Become a Bestseller Today, How to and Why You Need to Be a Bestseller, or one of the books from his 10-book series, Thriving Success. And once you read a book, if you're reading Steve's book or anyone else's book, please remember to go leave a review. Reviews are so critical and so important for authors. It is how they get discovered. It is how they get elevated in the sphere of readers. Next time you read a good book, recommend it to someone. Make sure that you let the author know what you think of their book. And the best way to do that is with a review. So don't forget, and I encourage you to go check out Steve's books. We'll have the links for those for you in the show notes, along with any other information that has links. So don't worry about running and grabbing a pen and paper. So I want to know where we can find your books. Obviously on Amazon. Anywhere else?
Well, I mean, Amazon is going to be your main place to get it. Yeah, I mean, I've got they're rebroadcasting Goodreads and all those other places, but the primary place to go get it would be on Amazon.
Okay, awesome. Well, as I said, we'll go ahead and list that for you. I know that you offer a I put editing here, but I don't think that was correct. But you do offer coaching services. So where can listeners reach out to you to connect with you about those different services in your coaching programs?
My website is thrivingbestsellers.com. And yeah, I have everything from concept to marketing strategy, editors, publishers, story development editors, formatters, graphics people. And then, of course, we have 100% success with the over 4,000 or 5,000 people that we've worked with, helping them to become our next best-selling author. You could be the next one.
See, that would be so awesome. See, I could just put that behind my name. I'm just going to talk to you after we're done though. I don't want to take
Perfect.
I don't want to take up their time talking about my books. So, but we do appreciate you being here. So you also are on social media. So where can they follow you on social media if they would like to reach out and follow what you're doing?
Yes, on Facebook, I'm Steve Kidd. On Twitter, I'm Ask Steve Kidd. On LinkedIn, I'm Steve Kidd with a bunch of weird numbers behind it. But if you look up Steve Kidd and you look up bestsellers or thriving bestsellers, you'll find me there. And then, of course, I have Steve Kidd, which is actually Ask Steve Kidd on YouTube as well. They've got that new Ask Steve Kidd that you can do and find me on YouTube as well.
Okay. No TikTok or Threads yet?
I have a TikTok account. There's nothing on it. And honestly, until you said Threads today, I wasn't even aware of Threads. So now I got to go check out a new social media.
Okay, well, I think you'll enjoy it. It's very similar to Twitter, which I guess is now X. So we'll just keep moving forward. But so I do think that Twitter personally would be amazing for you because it's usually just little video clips and helping authors and people do the things that they do. So I think it would be an absolute amazing program for you. And it's like a lot of times I just share clips from my YouTube stuff anyway over on Twitter just to kind of get to those people that don't necessarily always go to YouTube. It's kind of give them a little taste, a little tease of what they can go get. So I would
Ask Steve Kidd on Twitter. I've got now actually 11 years. It just showed me the other day, 11 years of content on Twitter.
Wow.
So
That's pretty amazing. Well, of course, we will have all of those links for you in the show notes so that you can go follow Steve wherever he is located. And of course, if we get any updates on new platforms that he's on, we'll go ahead and add those for you too as we pick those up. So, any upcoming events that our audience should know about?
the best thing to be able to do would be to follow me on one of the or all of those. I've got almost every month I do the Write Your Bestseller in 1 hour workshop. I do it either as a LinkedIn event or from one of those social medias and then do it in Zoom. So just depending on when you listen to this, whether it's the day it comes out or it's a year and a half later because they're going to be evergreen, just go over to the social media and look for it and find the next one that I'm going to be teaching.
All right, awesome. We'll do that. So, are there any kind of newsletters, giveaways, or freebies that people can download from your website that you'd like to tell them about? We always love freebies and downloads.
Oh yeah, I love giving free gifts. In fact, I put together a free gift on purpose. If you go to ongoingwealthguide.com, that's ongoingwealthguide.com. That is a 5-step formula for you to be able to, regardless of what the bank account might look like, live in abundance, know the process of what you need to do to continue generating, if you will, abundance in your life. And the cool part about it is, if you don't already have my book, you can actually add it on for only 99 cents into that versus the ebook version is usually $2.99. So you can add it on there, but you can get Ongoing Wealth Guide at ongoingwealthguide.com for free.
Okay, awesome. We'll include that in the show notes. So, what about newsletters or calendar events on your website that they can go sign up for so they get alerts?
Well, the nice thing about it is that that's all included in that. So when you do that, that'll automatically put you on my mailing list for my newsletter, and we'll get you into all the things and share with you anything we've got going on our social media. I always tell my followers in my group and on my newsletter first, everything else that I've got coming out.
Okay, great. Well, like I said, we'll go ahead and include that information for them, and we hope that you guys do go check out his website, check out his programs, check out his books, and I do encourage you to follow him and listen. He has a vast amount of experience, and I am so thankful that we get to share his information here on the Writer's Parachute. Was there anything else that you wanted to include before we go do our tip of the week?
The only other thing I would say is somebody's waiting on you. Don't let your book wait, not even another day. You could be a published best-selling author as soon as a month from now, but it's never going to happen until you don't start. And so somebody's waiting on you. Get started today.
Absolutely. So our tip of the week, we're going to talk about some of the things that Steve mentioned when he said he was having obstacles and problems and complications when he was writing his books. And one of the themes that he kept talking about was this fear, the self-doubt, the imposter syndrome, and waiting. And so I think we covered the topic of why that happens, but I want to give you some tip of the week of things that you can do to help you. Okay, number one, if you can't focus on that person that is waiting to hear what you have to say, sit down and write a letter from your future great fan. Think about what they would say to you about your amazing book that you're about to write and how it impacted their life. Now, I know this is coming from you, but it's a very cathartic. And then once you've done that, I want you to put it somewhere where you see it on a regular basis. And when you're feeling down and you're feeling like you're afraid or you're feeling that imposter syndrome or that self-doubt, reread that letter. That's your focus. That's your purpose. Number two, seek out accountability partners, join writing groups, join critique groups, join whatever you have to do to be included in the writing community. There is so much information out there. There's so many helpful people. Steve is one of them. One of the ones that I promote regularly, and I do not get any kind of compensation for this. I just think it's a good program, is Shut Up and Write. You can go to shutupwrite.com. They have meetings online and in person around the world, pretty much any hour of the day or night, to get you connected with other authors and writers. They don't generally give any kind of advice. They just give you a place to connect with other writers and get some writing done. I think that's a good place for a lot of people to start. But find an accountability partner, somebody that you check in with, even if it's a group, because this will keep you motivated and working forward. And think about the words that matter. It's like, how would you want somebody to tell you what you're going to say? Again, we talked about this a little bit, the difference between teaching and speaking and writing. Writing is very personal, reading is very personal. So make it personal. Think about, the person you're speaking to and the way you're speaking to them. And the other thing is motivation and a mentor. There are mentors out there. There are mentors just like Steve. I try to be a mentor here on the Writer's Parachute. So, seek that information. There are so many mentors in books. Go find some mentors that will help you and find that motivation. The motivation for me is that I have something to say that needs to get out into the world. I have something that I feel is important. Now, it may only be important to a few people, but it's important for me to say it. But a lot of times your motivation should be what it is that you're trying to achieve. It's a goal, it's a purpose, and be realistic with it. Try and keep yourself moving forward. It's like even one sentence is better than nothing. As an editor, I say this all the time, you can't edit a blank page. So don't worry about if it's not perfect. If you write it down the first time, there's always multiple tries to get it right. And so just keep working forward, keep yourself motivated, find those mentors, find those accountability partners, look for writing groups to be a part of the community. And I think you'll find that a lot of that fear goes away. Or you could take my advice on this. If you've watched the show, I've talked about this. It's like my internal critic, I've named him George, because I believe if you name the monster, they're less scary. So when George annoys me with his self-criticism, I generally send him to the closet until he can't come out until I'm ready to listen to him again. I also have a internal critic about my writing. It's my self-editor, and his name is Richard. He also joins George in the closet quite often. So sometimes you have to do these things to trick yourself. And don't forget, you are doing something that is incredibly personal and incredibly difficult, and you are going to have emotional reaction to it. But that just means your reader is probably going to have that one too. So just be kind to yourself, be generous, give yourself grace, and just keep working forward. It's not a sprint, it is a marathon, and run your own race. That's about all I can add. Did you have anything else you would like to add?
To steal the phrase from Nike, just do it.
There you
Put the book out,
go.
make it out there, and then go from there.
Exactly. You'll never know what you could achieve if you just believe in yourself and go. I want to thank Steve for being with us this week here on the Writer's Parachute, guiding author and writer dreams to a perfect landing. And as always, I am so grateful to be the host here on the Writer's Parachute. And we hope that you find this a safe, creative space to land your dreams to as well. Until next time, happy writing, everyone. Bye.